Hi, everybody. I hope you had a lovely day. It's been raining here off and on in West Palm, but I'm here. Mimi's here with another interesting guest. All my guests are interesting. This is Kwan Patton. She's a licensed clinical therapist. Say hi, Kwan.
Hello, hello out there. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, welcome, Kwan. Um, your journey has been shaped by feelings of unworthiness since day one, and I really resonate with that because I don't think my mother, well, I know my mother didn't want me. So, in the womb, you already can get that ingrained.
Right.
So that got me in the first sentence. And you encountered trauma that also
Hmm.
feeling unwanted. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But it wasn't until you faced the darkness of your own experiences that you realized the need for change. You're like my clone. This is what I wrote in my first book. So fun. Raised by wolves, trapped by demons. The wolves were my parents, and the demons were the men. And then I found out I had my own demons, and I had to work on.
Yes.
But it is a story that ends up coming out into the light. So it's a good ending. We have a lot in common. I could see that.
Yes, we do.
You, just reading your background, I feel like a strong sense of a bond. Um,
Thank you. Yes,
because
I
go ahead.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's funny because when you reach that dark space, right, it's tumultuous. It feels horrifying, but it's almost so necessary to go through that because where you end up is just pure bliss. Like you really don't even realize, like you really don't recognize yourself.
No. And the good news too is having my first 40 years be hell, the next 35 has been helping so many people that I'm not gonna say it makes it worth it, but at least there was something that came out of it that was helpful. And that's part of the journey. You don't know it at the time.
You never know it at the time. And I love that you say that because, when you do a lot of reflecting when you're in the thick of things, but as you're moving through it, you definitely self reflect on a lot of things. And true to form, a lot of my past relationships were demonic as well. And but the interesting part about that is when you're coming out of that metamorphosis and you start to self-reflect on the relationships in your life, you realize the vibration you actually were at also, because we only can attract who we are.
Yes.
And so that accountability piece is so, it's monumental for growth. It just, you can't move forward until you look in the mirror and say, what are all the things that I need? Forget about everyone else. Forget about who hurt me. Forget about who pained me. Forget about, and it's not to minimize those things, but our growth really has to happen from the root.
It does. And for me, I self-medicated with alcohol, and I did not know that I actually had chronic depression and panic disorder. And the alcohol was my medication, but I didn't know what I was doing at the time. And when I finally got to the darkest space where everything seemed wonderful, I finally found the right person and everything was great. And I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. I was in deep depression. And I sought help. It wasn't an intervention, with the alcohol. I sought help, and it's been 35 years I'm sober.
Wow, Mimi, can I just say that's commendable? That's
Yeah.
commendable. And I think self-medicating is super, super, it's not normal, but it's common. It's
Um,
very, very common. And, I same, right? I definitely, and the irony for me was, so we're so opposite, Mimi, but so alike in the same way. Like you said, your mom didn't. My mom was almost like the only one who actually did want me. Um, but everyone else was like, "Are you crazy?" Because my sister was born already, and we weren't even quite 2 years apart. So, like you said, that energy definitely carries into your birth, and it carries into your life. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't understand how deep that really is, but there's a lot of meaning to that.
Yeah.
Because even as a child, I had adults that was just nasty to me for no reason. Like I was targeted. I felt targeted a lot in my life.
Okay, right.
Um, but the alcohol for me, it wasn't a thing. When I was young, I had my son very young, and I was 21 years old, and I mean, not that I knew who she was or didn't even exist at that time, but I was really on my Michelle Obama mentality back then. I was like, I'm going to graduate. I want to
Yeah.
be this amazing woman. Like, I want to be this outstanding woman. And, Mimi, life happened. Life mixed with my trauma, me not having the skills to even understand what self-love was or to understand how to heal myself. And so I went through these despicable relationships with people that took as I continued to give. And I didn't really start like drinking, like having drinks
Mhm.
to be honest, until I was maybe like 35.
Yeah.
But when I was going through my second divorce, it was it took me down. That's when I really started drinking more than I would ever like to admit that I was. And it was really dark. I isolated a lot, and I was just in a lot of pain. And I found myself in two more relationships after that that was just treating me exactly the way I was treating myself.
Mhm.
That's how they were treating me. They were treating me the way that I was treating myself. And for me, I didn't do AA. I didn't do, because it wasn't that extreme to the point where I couldn't, you know what I mean? Like I would just drink for like every day. I would drink every day, and then I would go for weeks without, and then I would start drinking again. And I just decided that I didn't want to do that. Not only as moving into this field and being a clinician, I didn't want to feel like a hypocrite. I didn't want to feel like I was providing this healing energy to other people and I was so broken. So I knew right away I had to fix that.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I did go to a rehab, but I didn't know that I was going to a rehab. There was a doctor that I owned a bar, so it's kind of hard not to drink. It was a doctor that his office was right across the street. We were really good friends. And he would call me in the middle of the day and say, bring me a drink and make it a good one. Now he was a chiropractor. He is working on people's bodies, drinking, and he was good. He was very well known. I went to him. We all trusted him. He was very good at what he did. And some
Right.
people can be very functional, but he also did drugs. And every once in a while, he would go away for an extended time. And I didn't know what that was, where he was going. So the day that I hit my bottom, physically, mentally, spiritually, I said out loud, God, please help me. I can't do this anymore. And I got out of my car, and instead of going into my house, I went to his office and knocked on the door. And I said, Bob, where's that place that you go to when you get kind of bad? And the best part was everybody called him Dr. Bob. And I didn't know at the time that Dr. Bob is who started AA, Dr. Bob and Mr. Wilson. So it's kind of funny. It is funny.
Wow.
So Dr. Bob made phone calls that night. I went to the spa and I got,
Mm-hmm.
and they go through your suitcase and they go, honey, where do you think you are? You don't need this bathing suit. You don't need these magazines. You don't need, we're going to be busy. And then I was there 28 days. So it's almost like I got like tricked.
Right, but in a good way, right?
By the universe. It was some special force. That was the best thing that ever happened to me, you know. But
Absolutely.
I can understand the whole functional drinking too, because my father drank and he kept his job. He mostly drank on the weekends, but it was hell on the weekends. So share like some of your journey. Like what would you say your childhood, you said there was one person in particular that targeted you that was abusive, verbally or
I had a lot of abusive people in my life. No, none ever physical abuse. I never experienced any physical abuse,
yeah.
but I definitely experienced a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of gaslighting.
Oh,
Gaslighting was huge in my life. And
mm,
because I was impressionable, because I did not understand what love looked like or felt like, I was easily influenced by anyone close to me that I thought knew more than I did, which was probably everyone, because that's
mhm,
how I subconsciously thought of myself
mm,
until until you go through that healing phase and you go through that isolation, because isolation is huge in healing. And
yeah,
I started following my own internal compass, Mimi. I started understanding that other people does not have a GPS to my journey. They just
yeah.
don't.
No, we're not on the same path. Usually.
Right. So I experienced a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of gaslighting, a lot of people telling me that what I'm seeing in front of me is not what I'm seeing in front of me.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, I had a person in my life that still does that. So, tell me about your person-centered approach when you're doing therapy sessions. Tell me about that.
Oh, I love providing therapy because I love for clients to be the driver of their therapy. I love them to be the driver of their healing. When I
Mm,
have clients tell me, like, you have no idea what I did for you, I always tell them, I didn't do anything. I guided you, I nudged you, you did the work,
yeah.
because I want clients to feel empowered. I want them to understand that this journey is not an easy one. It is a hard journey, especially if you are intentional with doing the work. If you
Mm,
are intentional with really becoming the best version of yourself, it's really breaking you down and bringing you back up. And that's doing a lot of shedding. That's doing a lot of a lot of unpacking.
yeah. And the way you do it, the life coaching in your practice, um, how does it differ from traditional therapy, would you say?
I bring in a lot of spirituality in my sessions, Mimi, a lot. Like, clients will come to me and they'll talk to me, when people tell me that they saw a shadow, I believe them, but I am a different therapist. I'm not a traditional therapist in the sense that I do believe in spirits. I do believe, one of my really good books is, my goodness, and I'm so mad I can't think of his name right now. Many lives, many masters.
Book. I know the book. I've read the book, and my first psychiatrist recommended it because, and I was amazed because here he was a psychiatrist, and he believed in living more that you could live more than one life, right?
Yes,
And I didn't expect that from like a scientific person, you know what I'm saying? And he gave me that book. That's amazing.
you see, Mimi, we're here.
You know what I think? I think there's a path, but I think people have to find it their own way. So with me, I was on the path, but I kept taking like a left where I should took a right. Yeah, I'm going around in a circle or getting lost, and it took me a long time. But if I did not get sober, I couldn't get to the spirituality because I
Right,
was not awake. I was asleep.
right. And so here's the thing, Mimi. it's really, really hard because I feel sometimes awkward with people because I'm no longer asleep, and people will try to convince you who they are, but you're already awake. You can't go back to sleep, right? And so the thing that God does for you is when you start to chip away at those things that He's asking us to do, right? The behaviors that plummet us, the behaviors and the patterns that create chaos and confusion and darkness in our lives, when we pick away at that and we become obedient and we do the work and we remove these things, people, places, and things from our life, we really, I believe we are really afforded gifts because my grandmother was psychic and I never deemed myself as psychic and I still don't. But there are times where I absolutely have psychic abilities that I didn't have years ago when I was caught up in the rapture of low frequency and low
Yeah.
vibrational relationships. You know what I mean? Like, it's like once I removed myself from that, I almost had a higher sense of thought and being.
Have to get to that higher vibra like you said, vibration, and everybody's on a different vibration. So if you're on, let's say there's five and you're on four, and you're talking to someone that's on one, there's no way you're going to bond with that person. And the other thing too is, I believe from my trauma as a child that I wrapped my heart with layers and layers of iron and ice. And through my path, through my journey, it would shed a layer at a time because I wasn't going to let anybody in. Okay. So that's part of my story. And I really believe that I had to shed those layers one at a time, which I did. I went to therapy 9 years straight when I got out of treatment. I would I got 9 years and 5 years. And I did not couple, yeah, I did two couples and group and, individual. And 5 years sober, um, I got, I had to go away again because I had an eating disorder. And I went to California for 21 days. And they were more new age. So they did a lot of new age thinking and stuff. I did a
Okay.
lot of screaming and acting out and different things and yoga and all that. And then a few years later, I got depressed again and I went to the Cairn Foundation. I don't know if you know about it, but it is wonderful. And they have a program for family of origin issues. They only
Mm-hmm.
pick 5 people at a time for 5 days. And they do role playing. Somebody plays your father, somebody plays you, somebody plays your mother. And wow, did I get a lot out of that. But
That
I
sounds
did
amazing.
amazing in 5 days what they did. But when I got home, my husband said to me, "Are you going to go away every couple of years?" And I said, if I have to, if I
Right.
have to go and because
That's
every
right.
time I do it, I come back and I'm better. So,
That's phenomenal.
yeah,
Wow. So it's
but
interesting because again, the opposite of you and I, but similar.
yes,
For me, I never had depression or anxiety. I mean, I have anxiety. Everyone has anxiety,
you
but
have
it
to.
wasn't extreme. It wasn't creating, it wasn't bad, right? So I didn't have depression. I did have anxiety, but the interesting thing for me was when I was in the drinking space in life, I was very sad and very depressed around that time. But once I stopped drinking, that completely went away. And I was like, wow. So in
Now,
actuality,
alcohol is a
it's
depressant.
a
If
depressant.
people don't know that,
Absolutely. Yes, Mo. No people. A lot of people don't know, but it is a depressant.
they're depressed, so they drink and they get more depressed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
when you're working with clients and they're dealing with what life transitions, depression, anxiety, different things, what kind of challenges do you find when you have clients that are deeply troubled?
Usually there's usually two things. There's usually stemming from past trauma that they have not really released, that what I call pockets of pain. That's what
That's
I
a good.
love to call it, because that's exactly what it is. So you experience, a lot of clients will experience childhood trauma that we have to work through to get to that place. And then sometimes it's just their current external factors around them that's just not making them happy from what
Yeah,
they would say. And usually my approach with that, Mimi, is first is educating the importance of understand happiness, right? Because people, we have to be internally happy, right? External factors, happiness to a lot of people means power, it means fancy cars, it means money, it means those things. But in
until
fact, that is not what happiness is actually.
no,
The
no,
goal is to get those same feelings that people think happiness, like getting that new car or getting that, having so much money, the happiness that they feel with that is what they need to feel without all of those things. That's true happiness. True happiness is an internal,
yeah,
constant feeling of, you're not worrying about, your nervous system is relaxed, you're calm, you're understanding that balance in life is important, you're understanding that you can't control the narrative, so you have to let God do it. it's
mhm,
it's understanding that sometimes we have to sit back and understand that the flow will happen either way. We
yeah,
have to pray on things, we have to put our best step forward, but we have to have faith. When you talk about medical problems and you talk about stress and hypertension, and I mean, the world is full of stress and people don't know how to let go. We have to let go.
yeah. I belong to, we don't call it a church, we call it a spiritual community because it's non-denominational. But one of
Mhm.
our main things is prayer. And when we go to service on Sunday, part of the service is meditation, you know. So we start with prayer, then we do meditation, then our minister gives us talk, which is always fabulous. And we have a singer who sings an inspirational song, and then we have community after. Community is very important. To go and have coffee in the community room after service and connect with other people. But what I do is the meditation and the mindfulness when I get anxious. That helps me a lot.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
And I have a couple grandchildren that do it too because they saw that their mothers and I, did this thing and it seemed to be helpful. Yeah.
Nice. Wow,
Yeah.
that sounds really nice, Mimi. That
My
sounds really nice.
spiritual community, oh, it's lovely. It's called Unity
Yeah.
of Palm Beaches. So if you're ever
I,
down here,
I need a spiritual community here.
yeah. Well,
Definitely.
there are unity churches everywhere, all over the
Mhm.
world, actually. But it's a bad time for churches and religions because a lot of them are shutting down and people don't want to go.
I
The
know.
younger people do not believe in it in a lot of things. So, it's another thing we just have to get through. So let's talk
Exactly.
about, let's talk about handling some of this stuff. My husband has Parkinson's, and he was a jock in high school and everything else, swimming, bicycle, any sport like that. There, I wasn't. I'm cerebral. I hated exercises. I don't want to ride a bike. I don't want to do anything. Give me a book. So
Right.
anyway, 2020 came and he had progressed to stage 3 Parkinson's, which means he needs me a lot. He can do
Right.
a lot of things, but he definitely can't be alone. And he got into this practice after 4 o'clock of totally being nonverbal. And it was getting me depressed. So
Mhm.
I went into therapy on Zoom because it's 2020. And
Right.
my therapist said, and this is important for people to hear, go in your room at 4 o'clock and start writing. I said, what? She said, anything, write about yourself. So that's how I wrote my first book. Once I started writing my book, I couldn't stop. And I don't know what it was, but putting it on paper, I think it was a cathartic experience. Yeah. And then I
Yes,
the book too, don't you?
yes. So Mimi, I encourage your listeners, my clients too. I always encourage people to journal, and the reason you just said it, and I say it all the time to clients. When we're ruminating about things in our head, it's just swarming, right? It's swarming, it's creating tension, it's creating stress. But when we're writing it down, there's something about reading what you're writing. There's something about seeing it through a different side of your brain, and it
Mhm.
just makes so much more sense when you're writing it. It's very therapeutic. Sometimes you don't know what to write, but just start writing, right? I also encourage mindfulness. Like sometimes I'll go for a walk, and especially around the springtime, the trees are orange and they're so bright red, and sometimes I'll pick up the leaf and I'll just sit in the moment.
That's
It
the
helps.
thing. That's so good.
Right.
My husband, well, he could blame it on the Parkinson's, but like when I walk out the door, first thing I do is go look at the flowers in my garden and see how they're doing, what needs to be
Right.
trimmed later. And then I go and come home and I might trim and water. But, like I like to do those things and I talk to my plants. But I then found out about self-care. Let's get that message out. And as a therapist, I'm sure you do too. If you're a caretaker, you're the last person you take care of.
Oh,
I would
absolutely.
find I had times where I would say, oh my God, it's 4 days and I haven't had a shower. Like literally, because
Right.
no time. So
Right.
I finally got family members and I said, look, you got to come down and be with him so I could go away.
Right.
Yeah, so twice now I have had like family members come down, just three days or something. And I took a short cruise and oh my God, it was wonderful.
Oh my God, Mimi, that's beautiful. That's self-care.
That's self-care. I got a massage. I met new
Yes.
people. I went to Key West where I always wanted to go and walked around. I had a wonderful time. And I've done it twice and I'm going to continue to do it. But
I
getting a
love that for you. And let
manicure,
me
facials, anything.
yes, let me just say too, Mimi, so oh my goodness, I'm such an advocate of that, and it's so important for self-care because imagine you not having that self-care and constantly being the caregiver and the caregiver. I mean, eventually we're human, we're eventually your stress levels, you can't take care of anyone unless you take care of yourself.
That's right. And you have to have your own identity. And what happens with caretakers is they lose their identity
They
and
do.
they become nothing but a caregiver. So for me, since 2020 to now, I have written 4 books and I have a podcast and a YouTube show. And people go, how do you do all that? This is my release when I do this stuff. I find happiness. I find joy in doing this.
Yes.
I love talking to people I never met before, like you. Like I will talk to anybody. Like when I went back on the ship the second time, the crew all knew me. They went, "Oh, Miss Mimi is back," because I want your story, I want your name.
Yeah, I love that, Mimi. I am certainly on that, and I'm in that space these days. I don't know, my quest for life is just different today. It's really, really different, and I'm not interested in the mundane day-to-day conversations. I'm really more interested in, what can I do to make people better? Like, where can I contribute? What can I leave on this earth that is going to be able to, help others in years and decades to come? Like, that's really where my mind is at these days, my headspace.
I
It's
have somebody, yeah, I agree, because I have somebody that read my book tell me, I read your book and it helped me forgive my mother. So, because the mother is an alcoholic. That's
Right.
a legacy. I'm leaving a legacy of these books about my experience. And it doesn't matter if it's 100 people that read them or 1,000 or whatever. It's if it's helping one person. So let's wrap this up. We could talk forever. I could tell our personalities are too alike. So do you have any future goals or aspirations or ideas of things you want to do? Something
So
new.
I definitely want to continue spreading awareness on spiritual growth, healing, and more importantly, self love. Because without self love, we really can't move forward healthy. We just can't. Um, I don't know in what capacity that looks like. When I go on my 10-mile walks on weekends, I talk to God all the time and my spirit guides, and I ask for guidance, and I give thanks for the gratitude and for the things that I have. So I don't know what that looks like, Mimi, but I know that I'm definitely in the right direction based
Yeah.
on my angel numbers and my signs and synchronicities that I receive all the time. So
Absolutely. We're really on the same journey, I think, on the same path. We didn't take the wrong one this time, to the right one.
definitely not.
And to my listeners, um, God was mentioned a lot. And the Pope just recently said, all religions lead to heaven. And I thought that was wonderful that he said that.
That's
He's the
beautiful.
first Catholic Pope that ever said anything like that. That you don't
Mhm.
have to be Catholic or, Jewish or whatever. And what it's really about is having a spiritual life.
It is. It is.
And I don't care what you call your higher power, but you have to have a spiritual life and you have to do things like we talked about. So thank you so much for coming. I wish we had more time to talk, but maybe we'll do another one
I would
because
love that.
yes, we'll have to do that. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed this. This was really good. And remember,
Yes.
the one thing to take away, and thank you again for coming,
You're
is,
welcome. Thank you for having me.
oh, it was a pleasure. But remember, love yourself. That's what you need to do in this life is love yourself.